a VR horror game set in the World of Darkness universe that puts you in the shoes of a wraith, and all on the Oculus Quest. You're not going to want to miss today's episode as we talk with Fast Travel Games about their upcoming horror experience, Wraith: The Oblivion Afterlife, today on Questions with Creators. Hi, and welcome to Questions with Creator. I'm Matt from BMF, your host. Today we are with Andreas Juliusson from Fast Travel Games, and we've got some really cool stuff to share with you. Welcome to the show. So, I'm really excited for this call because I've known a little bit about this game for a while, and now you've sent me over some information, and we're going to chat about it. Tell me a little bit about this upcoming game, Wraith: The Oblivion Afterlife.
Yeah. At its core, it's a narrative-driven horror game, which means it's going to be really, really scary. And I love scary. Personally, I'm a massive horror game or movies fan, so this is really, a dream project for me, personally. I think the whole studio, almost all of the devs feel the same way. Some actually are not able to play the game because it's too scary at the moment. But it's really, we've made 2.5 games really so far. We made Apex Construct 2 years ago, or we released it 2 years ago. And then last fall, we had both Buddy Cuts 2, which we made with Neat Corporation, and The Curious Tale of Stolen Pets, which was more of an experimental passion project from a small team in the studio. So what we try to do now is take all the learnings that we have gathered over the last 4 years of VR gaming being around, and put all that into one massive project. So luckily enough, we teamed up with Paradox Interactive quite early, and got to start working on what is called Wraith: The Oblivion Afterlife. It's an official World of Darkness product, and that means you might have heard of Vampire the Masquerade or Werewolf the Apocalypse, for example. Wraith: The Oblivion is the third part of that same supernatural alternative universe, which started out in the 90s with pen and paper role-playing games, of course, and then it has received a couple of really cool primarily PC games from that point. And of course, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2 is coming out later this fall from Paradox, so the World of Darkness is really growing to become a big thing. And this game is the first time you get to play the World of Darkness in VR. And it's also the first ever time where you get to play a video game based on Wraith: The Oblivion.
Well, I can tell you one thing. I'm very excited, and before I'm going to ask you some more questions. Before we do, we're going to jump in and check out the trailer because I think people really need to see this.
In Barclay Mansion, even the dead are terrified. Something happened here. Something vicious and cruel. And no one got out alive. Not even you.
All right, so one major thing I'm really excited about with this is we've talked before, and this game is being developed to work with the Quest, correct? And this is a Quest channel, so maybe mention a little bit, put our players at ease, our Questers at ease, and let them know that this is coming to Quest platform.
It is definitely coming to Quest and Rift, and it's not a port from PC to Quest. We're working with the Quest from the ground up. I think, there's a sort of an untapped potential in VR horror when it comes to the untethered headsets, where you can actually spin around 360 or actually take a few steps inside a house. So we're focusing heavily on the Quest version. We are focusing on all versions, really. But the Quest version is definitely one of the leading platforms, and it's, I'm probably personally the version I'm most excited about myself. That's the version we play now every Friday in the office. It's just an amazing game.
So here's a question for you. You say you play it in the office. How many shrieks and screams do you get every week when you play it?
Less and less, I would say, because people tend to not want to play anymore. No, the thing is, the what we've done the last few weeks now is adding some personality and textures to the enemies in the game. A couple of weeks back, they were just simple silhouettes moving around, which was quite scary. But now we've added personality to their movements and to their faces and their characters, which took the game up to a whole new level. So I think this Friday is probably going to be, I don't know, halt the studio, calling in sick or something. But it's all good, and I mean, it's not. I just want to make this clear. This game is not a jump scare, cheap horror kind of game. So we're trying to make a comprehensive, a full game, massive tons of exploration, and a more under your skin kind of horror. There will be jump scares, of course, but it won't be cheap, and that's not the primary reason to play it. It's you basically get the whole massive building called the Barclay Mansion to explore and unravel mysteries inside.
So that kind of leads into what I wanted to ask about next. People might be wondering kind of what style game as far as story goes. Is this kind of more of a story-based game that you would say?
Definitely. The story is very central to it, I would say. There's a massive lore within the World of Darkness and also within Wraith the Oblivion, which we have tried to put into the game while at the same time making something new. So, the story is completely brand new and written by our creative director, Eric Odeldahl. And I can give you a little bit of detail about it. We don't want to reveal too much. And maybe, most people might not know what a wraith is really. So one of the unique aspects of this game is that you will be playing as a wraith. That means that when the game starts, you're already dead. It doesn't mean that you are a traditional ghost like in the movies and all that. So wraiths it's a little bit in between still being human and not being able to transcend to the next life. For some reason, you are stuck in the afterlife after living. And as a wraith, you can impact the physical worlds in different ways. So you will get to learn about your wraith powers and how to use them. And we'll tell more about the wraith powers later. So that's the first thing. You really are dead in the game. And then about the story, part of it is finding out why you are dead and what actually happened. And then you will find all these clues and mysteries in the house about a bigger and more, behind the veil kind of I don't want to spoil too much right now. There's more stuff taking place inside the house that you will unravel, a bigger mystery, and for some reason you're also being chased by these specters. They're called specters, which is basically people who died in very nasty ways are still stuck inside the mansion, and they sort of materialize in different shapes and forms. So it's very much. Eric, our creative director, as I mentioned, he's a massive fan of games like Amnesia, The Dark Descent, or Alien Isolation, and those are kind of inspirational sources for this game, which means it's you won't go all guns blazing and be this superhero in the game. You're actually on the defense quite a lot, and you need to find cover. You need to be cautious when moving around and exploring things and solving the clues and all that. So, that's the kind of game we're aiming for.
Yeah. It sounds very exciting. So it seems like you're really going for a very atmospheric feeling. That's, like you said, less cheap jump scares and more building tension and building into a story that's going to be scary on its own.
Exactly. And there's story is one part, but the gameplay is the second thing, and exploration is a big thing about the game. Like I mentioned, you have the whole Barclay Mansion, which is like this modern. It's not a classic horror mansion. It's not a Gothic castle. It's a modern mansion with all the modern things you would expect to find in it. And we'll reveal more details about it because the mansion itself has a very center part in the whole experience, and the reason why you were there in the first place is something that you have to find out as you start playing.
So as far as, let's generalize a little bit more. Now, when it comes to you, you said you're a horror fan for games. Going backwards now, speaking of this game, what is one of your favorite games in VR that is a horror game that you might maybe not relate to this one, but you really feel like this elevates that kind of game? I don't know if it's something you can kind of think of. There's something like that. It sounds like you're really revolutionizing or trying to revolutionize horror genre in VR, or what it's looked at, because a lot of the stuff in VR and horror right now, unfortunately, is the cheap jumps. And that's fun for a minute, a one playthrough, but it gets old fairly quickly because people get scared and then they know where it is, or they're not too scared.
No, exactly. And we said very early on, we're not going to make a funhouse horror game. There are tons of them out there. Some are actually pretty decent. If you want that kind of short 20 minutes experience and being getting these jump scares thrown at you more as an amusement park experience, so to speak. But this is very much a full game with all the pieces that you want there. It's the gameplay, it's the exploration, it's the narrative, the story. I think one of the, and this is really, it has its flaws, but I really appreciate Dread Halls, which is out on Quest now as well since some time back. But I played it on PSVR quite a long time ago when it was new. And it's 9 levels with random elements. But I also remember the Eye of the Beholder and King's Quest kind of games on the old PC age. So I found some pleasure in playing that's at least that view inside a horror game. But what I really liked about it was the unpredictability. It didn't really explain much to you as a player, and I don't know if you played it, but when you enter a room and there are statues, like static statues just standing there, as long as you look at them, if you turn your head away, they start moving towards you, and then if you look at them again, they stop. So you have to move around the room like this and keep looking at them so they don't come too close and kill you. And then there's another sequence in that game that apparently I'm one of the few players who have experienced, because when I talk to other Dreadhawk players, they can't remember this, which is also why I like about the game. It's the sense of anything can happen, really. But I ended up in a dead end. I was going to turn back and go to the safe area inside the main hall of that level I was in. And when I turned back, I couldn't see further down the corridor anymore because there was something standing in the way. I was like, oh, wait, what is that? And as I, went closer, there was this bloody pig with massive teeth just staring at me. And then it started to run at me. And I knew behind me, there was just a dead end. And I had no weapons really, way of defending myself. And I couldn't run past it because the pig covered the whole corridor. So I just threw my headset off and lay myself in the couch and screamed for it. and that's, I haven't experienced that in traditional flat screen horror gaming before. I think I played PT, the Silent Hill demo, first person demo that came out and disappeared. That's probably the scariest one I've ever played. And I would say, from what I've seen right now, we're going for a little bit of that in Wraith the Oblivion Afterlife as well.
Well, that sounds terrifying. I remember playing PT when it first came out, and it was insane. I mean, but that was before VR, so it was before we kind of got spoiled, because now you jump into a flat screen horror game and you're like, it's a little scary, but it's not the same.
No, I know. I mean, I think VR horror has destroyed flat screen horror games for me.
Yeah,
I just laugh at them right now, but. To that point, even though there are quite a few horror games out there, I still think there's so much untapped potential in what horror can do in VR. And the balance, of course, is to find the level of horror, high enough, but not too much. Yeah, so players will want to keep playing and enjoy themselves as well. So you won't be scared all the time in our game, but you won't be able to rest completely for long periods. Like it's gonna be, it's gonna be scary, but it's gonna be fun as well. That's the most important thing, I think, as well.
Yeah, you had mentioned Dreadhalls, and I actually played that on the channel last year. It was probably one of the scariest experiences I've had. It was the first real horror experience I had in VR. I've done a little bit here and there. I mean, on PSVR, I did. I can't even remember what the game was. I mean, I did the demo of Resident Evil VR on the PlayStation, and there's some other stuff I did, but nothing like that. And when it came out to the Quest, I was like, oh, Dreadhalls, I've heard of this. I'm going to play it. And the video, people loved the video because it was, I mean, I just kept screaming. I got to the point where I had to just be done. It's like, all right, I'm already a wimp when it comes to horror, and I used to be a wimp when it came to 2D horror, but now I can play a traditional horror game. I was like, well, I've done this in VR, so I'm not too worried about it.
Oh, I will love watching you play our game then.
I'm sure a lot of people will love watching us or watching me play it, because I'm sure there'll be quite a few times when I just have to take off my headset and just be like, all right, well, let's take a break for a minute.
I think you mentioned Resident Evil. I enjoyed Resident Evil. I played the whole game in VR together with a friend. We played 1 hour each, and we stood up and we actually did this when we climbed the stairs just to get that full immersion of being in the house. And I think it was an awesome experience. But what it didn't have, of course, was the VR specific interactions.
Yeah,
it's very much a first person shooter in where you can look around in VR and imagine that you are actually inside the game in VR, but there's no interactions. You don't open drawers using your hands. You don't fend off enemies with your hands like this. You basically don't have hands. So there's a cut off between the gameplay experience and my expected immersion in the game, so to speak. So I think just imagine if Resident Evil was made for VR exclusively, for example. And I'm not saying we're making Resident Evil. It's not going to be a zombie shooter horror game we're doing, but we're making a game that's only for VR with all that means, and with a horror level implemented, which I think might be unprecedented to this date.
Yeah, the level of immersion that you get when you play a VR-specific game is very different than when you play a game that is designed with a VR element. So I think the interaction is what really sells a game. So I'm very curious to play the game and get immersed in where you get lost. Because if you're playing with a controller, you're there, but your hands are doing what they've always done, playing on a PlayStation game, so you kind of can forget that you're in VR almost. You just have a big screen. But in virtual reality, when you're in a true virtual reality game, when you go to pick something up, or you can lift your hands in front of your face and something scares you, that is a totally different experience.
Definitely. So, this was what we just saw earlier, was the very relatively short announcement trailer of the game. It didn't show anything from the game, really. Elements, of course. That mansion is the one you will actually explore, and that corridor is going to be in the game. But next for Afterlife is that we have a gameplay trailer coming already in August. So it won't be long until we can reveal more about how the game actually looks and performs and how you play it, which is nice. It's going to be part of Gamescom Now, which starts August 27th, I think. So that's the next thing you can keep a look out for. And of course, you can follow Wraith Afterlife on all the social media channels, really, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, if you want to stay updated. So we'll have more stuff soon to share about the game. But in between that, of course, there's vacation incoming.
One other thing I wanted to bring up, you mentioned already a couple of times that this is a fully fledged out game. It's not like a short half-hour-long experience. And now you obviously don't necessarily know the game length now yet, but people can expect it to be a full campaign, right? Something that they're going to enjoy for at least a longer period of time than some of the other traditional horror games you're getting in VR.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
That is correct.
All right.
Thanks,
awesome.
Greg. I mean, The Curious Tale of Stolen Pets was extremely short.
Yep.
Well, extremely short. It's from a VR perspective, it was relatively short. It was a qualitative, packed experience made by a small team.
Yep.
And this time around, we're putting all our efforts behind making it a fully fledged VR game. Correct. So you won't finish it in just a few hours. No, you won't. Awesome. And we're also adding elements to it to incentivize, explorationists or completionists.
Yep.
That we can share more later on, but there will be reasons for you to find everything in the house or, explore every nook and cranny that you can find, understand part of the narrative and get deeper into the lore of the mansion and the World of Darkness connection and all that. So it's definitely a fully fledged VR game, yeah.
Awesome. That gets me excited. Exploration is one of my favorite things in traditional games, and it's not done a lot in virtual reality. Either the game is a completely 100% narrative pipeline where you just go a certain direction and you're not really allowed to touch anything or look at anything. So just the idea of even if it's some exploration, I get excited. So I'm excited to see what kind of level of immersion you get to be able to have by exploring a mansion.
Yeah, and the thing is, interactions and exploration has been key pillars for us as a studio, I think, since the very start, since we founded the studio 4 years ago. Apex Construct, of course, it was the first title ever. But even that title, I think we tried to make things with interaction, to make meaningful interaction. So if you find a drawer, you should be able to open it in that way you think, like, intuitively, so to speak. Yep. If you enter a room in a Barclay mansion, you will see a lot of meaningful interaction that you can perform, and they will perform the way you think they should, and they also give you reason, they give you meaning to explore the house. So I think some VR games have a lot of empty void spaces, really, where you don't find anything useful. There's no really meaning to search for things, stuff like that. Some meaningful interactions has been one of our key pillars from the start, and we tried to put that into the Curious Tale and Buddy Cuts 2 as well.
Yep.
And definitely in this fourth title coming from us, Afterlife, there's going to be a lot. I think we strongly believe that if you believe in your interactions and the actions you take in the game, it increases your presence in it, and it really makes you believe that you are in this room, in this mansion, that you're being chased by a specter, or that you need to hide in the closet and close the closet door, like that. So yeah, you can expect, and you will get that from Afterlife for sure.
Yeah, well, that gets me really excited because I think that, like I said, it just amps up the level of immersion when you play something, when things make sense. When you see a drawer that would open in real life, but you go to grab it and it's just a panel there that doesn't actually do anything, you're like, well, okay, this is a game, and they don't want me to open it. And then there's always going to be instances of that in any game, regardless of how the level of immersion, I imagine. But the fact that you guys are working on creating not just a game, but almost a world where you enter into, which I think is important in VR even more than traditional games. Because traditional games, we understand it's a game when we're playing it. A lot of gameplay elements go into it, and we're just used to the way that it plays, even in first person. Because if you open up a drawer, you're going to grab it with your controller, and you're going to pull it open. But when you're playing in virtual reality, I think it's important in virtual reality to inject at least a little bit of that realistic interaction with the world around you. Otherwise, it breaks the immersion, or at least limits how much you can forget you're inside of a video game.
No, definitely. I mean, Half-Life Alyx, I think, does a great job of letting you as a player, or setting your expectations right in terms of what you can interact with, what you cannot.
Yep.
When you start playing that game, it's almost immediately clear to you what objects in your environment are interactable and what isn't. So you don't find yourself going to a wall and trying to open something which is just graphics. The game puts you in a position where you understand, okay, all these things I see now, these are interactive objects. They will most likely be meaningful for me. And the rest I can skip because the game is telling me, there's no point. It's just there for, to put you in a room or put you in a place. And I think that's art to development, I think.
Yep.
Like to understand how to set those expectations in the players so they won't become disappointed.
Yep.
When they try to do stuff that the game kind of promises that you should be able to do, if you know what I mean.
Yes, yep. Yeah, I'm one of those people that is very easily distracted, so when I play through a game that has any kind of interaction, I want to go and look at every single drawer. I want to try every single door. That's just what I like to do. I like to find everything I possibly can, pick up the stuff on the floor if there's someone on the floor. So, yeah, it's like you mentioned with Half-Life Alyx, the interactions are so meaningful, and everything around you that you're able to interact with is so obvious, and they did a really good job at creating that level of immersion so that you walk into a room and you can see what you can grab, essentially. And then there's obviously doors you can't go in because it is a narrative story, but that's okay because they're blocked off by something, or there's a board across it so you can't get in there, or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. And you accept that as a player as long as the game is fair and really puts that in front of you. Like, this is the level of expectations you should have when you play this game. So not everything can be interactable. There is no VR headset computer that can do that today.
No.
But as long as it's meaningful and it's fun to do, and you get rewarded for doing it, and it feels natural and like in real life, there's tons of stuff we can do with interactions that helps, get that level of immersion that I think a horror game especially needs.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I can tell you one thing. I am extremely excited to find out more, to see the trailer in August, and to eventually get my hands on this game, because it sounds like an amazing step forward for virtual reality. And the fact that it's coming to the Quest, obviously, I have a Quest-specific channel, and a lot of people watching are Questers, so it just makes me excited that at Fast Travel Games you see the Quest as a valid platform, and it's a platform that you want to develop for.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've seen the Quest has meant a lot to us as a studio. I would say we recently announced the fact that we have sold 100,000 copies of Apex Construct, our first game, and 50% of all these copies have been sold last year. And well, you can guess what that depends on, really. But
right, yeah.
The Quest has been massive for us as well. And we keep seeing it grow. Our game sales are super important on Quest, and I personally love it. I have a hard time, putting up my sensors and getting all these cores in place. I'm very much jump into plug and play experiences, and if I can do that and at the same time play a fully fledged horror game, I think there's a massive experience here for the taking that I'm happy that we're doing. So super excited about it as well. Yeah,
I can tell you that I'm very happy. I know a lot of people are going to be very happy too. So make sure you guys keep an eye out in August for the new trailer. And if you want to check out the trailer again, the announcement trailer, jump to the link in the description. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure talking with you, hearing more about the game, and I am really excited to find out more. Huge thank you and shout out to all of my Patreon members, including the VR Revolutionaries, Audrey Gordon, Ghost Robo 100, and Mike Curtis. You can check out more of my videos right here, and if you want to get the most out of your Oculus Quest, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and the bell icon for notifications. Thanks so much for watching, and happy questing.